Good evening, everyone. This is Chrissy Conversation, and I am host Chrissy. This evening, I have a very special guest. This is Deputy Chief Arlen Jones, and Arlen is another one of us. So I'm very excited to have him on the show. And as we always start, I like to give my salute to first responders, which he is one, and to all those that are fighting the pandemic. Even though we are vaccinated every day, people are still dying. So we want to thank those that are in the front lines, helping to try to get better, helping people get through this process. Also, we want to take a time out and say happy June for all of those that are in June this month. That this is Juneteenth. This is the moment of freedom for us to be recognized, as well as also say to all of those in the LGBTQ community. All right, this is also a recognition, so we want to also acknowledge you. Now tonight we're going to talk about first responders and like in how Deputy Arlen Jones started and where he is today, and how you can find out more about the fire department's help. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Deputy Chief Arlen. Hello.
Hey, my niece.
It's awesome to have you here. I'm glad I'm able to do this. Everyone, this pre-recorded session, but as always, are live, so I don't remove mistakes. So I'm happy to find myself in the so, Chief, can you please explain to us who you really are in the fire?
Okay, okay. My role, of course, is in the title of deputy chief. And with a deputy chief, I'm a deputy chief shift commander, meaning when I'm working, I am one of the four shift commanders. We have four shifts in Baltimore City Fire Department. When I'm working, I'm in charge of the entire Baltimore City Fire Department, suppression and EMS side. So all the members, all of the stations, all the parts of the city, I am in direct control.
Wow. So, like you said, you're in direct control of the city and the events of emergencies and different things that go on throughout the city. So that's something that took you time to that position.
Yeah, it took time. I just started my 29th year in March. Started my 29th year. So I've had promotions. I think my first promotion was probably 2 years into my career, and I promoted ever since then. And I attained the title of deputy chief.
So 29 years. Oh my,
29 years.
29 years.
Yes.
And I'm 38. Yeah, I'm 38. I'm 38. Wow, that's like the majority of my life has been in the fire department. And I can still remember when you first joined the fire department as a kid, being able to walk over to your fire station and see you sitting in your uniform at work. What made you choose this path for your career choice?
It's a funny story. I don't think I chose the path. I think this is probably what was supposed to do on some level. Actually, what happened is in the early 90s, we're talking 90, 91. I was in college at Morgan. Shout out to HBCUs. The awesome experience. It was great. I encourage all you parents out there to send your children to HCBU, BCUs. So I was in school at the time at Morgan. I was a science major. I had plans on, I was actually working at NIH in Bethesda in the chemistry lab at the time. I thought I was going to either go into research or maybe medical school afterwards. I had all these grand plans. And my mother, who was living in Richmond, Virginia at the time, she happened to be visiting Baltimore, and they were advertising on TV for the fire department. And she kept looking at that commercial, and she told me that's something I should do. And I'm looking at my mother like, I'm in the middle of college. I should be graduating soon. This is my career path that I've chosen. And she just insisted. She stayed on me. She stayed on me. She insisted. She just, it's something about that commercial and thinking about me in that aspect that just, she just stayed on. She stayed on me. And I can admit to you, I mean, that's your grandmother, my mother. I took the test, filled out the application, and took the test just to quiet her down, just to satisfy her so she can stop talking to me about joining the fire department. Make a long story short, when they finally called me to take the test, I was one of probably 5,000 people in that room at the time. This is why I'm saying this had to be something that I didn't choose, but this was something I was supposed to do. And I had like 3 or 4 friends with me, personal friends. And I don't know how many of those 5,000 got chosen, but none of my friends got chosen. And I was chosen to be in the Baltimore City Fire Department. And I'm gonna tell you how much it was meant for me to be in the career that I am. I talked to some of my mentors about it because I had some reservations because I didn't know anything about the fire department, didn't think anything about it. And I'm thinking that higher education is the way to go. Talked to my uncle, shout out to Uncle Dan, talked to several people in my circle that I really respected. And they all encouraged me. My uncle told me my sticking point was if I joined the fire department, can I still continue going to school? And with the great schedule that we have, which I'll explain a little later, I was going to be able to do both. So I said, okay, I needed it. My daughter was young. I was just starting. I was trying to finish school. If anybody that's been to college know you broke. I was broke. I needed a job. So I did it, and I haven't regret 1 minute of it. It's actually the best thing that ever happened to me personally.
I did not know you were interning. So you were interning or something at NIA? You say about NIA?
Yeah, in college, I was since I was a biology major, science major. I
Really?
got a
I mean, I knew you were biology.
okay,
I remember
okay.
my uncle was a very determined person. I remember sometimes he would take me with him to class.
Yes, you and my daughter. You
Yes,
and my daughter.
me,
And yeah,
my cousin,
yeah.
just to complete his class. And I remember that, but I don't know that you were that, involved. So you just actually taught me something else about yourself.
Okay. Well, I always wanted to encourage you guys by giving you an example. I remember my aunt, who lives in Boston now, taking me to Morgan as a child. She graduated from Coppin, but she would take us to events at Morgan as a kid. So I wanted to pass that on to the generation coming up behind me to inspire some of you guys to know what it's like to sit into a college classroom and have that atmosphere in your mind as you got older.
Awesome. Awesome. I mean, that's unbelievable. Your life kind of turned in a direction in something that you were not about. Took the test and
I took the test and passed, and I'm gonna go back to the NIH job. It was prestigious, but it was the boringest job I've had in my life. It was research. At that time, we were doing research on some of the first HIV drugs that were out at the time. I think the drug was DDI, if anybody can remember back that far. And one of the doctors told me you can work on something for 10 or 15 years and not get the result that you want. I said, oh, that's enough for me. Yeah, that's enough for me. So that was enough for me. Research. You have to be a special person to do research.
and shout out to is at NIA, CDC, anybody
Yes, yes. We need those people. Yes.
that are allowing us to get back to normal lives. The fact that you made the choice, a lot of people don't know. What are some of the things that you have to do in order to even once you pass? It's just knowledge.
Okay, so let's get back to that. I passed the reading part of the test, and then you have a physical part of the test, which they held at the time. If anybody's old enough to remember, Baltimore, the old Memorial Stadium. So my physical exam test was at the Memorial Stadium. And you went through some things to make sure that you were in shape. And at that time, I was in awesome shape. I was young, 23, 24 at the time. So I breezed through that. So once I got in the fire department, where I was in the fire academy, which I started on March 15, 1993, they taught you everything that you need to know, because people in the city, like where I was living, Baltimore City, and at the time you had to be a resident to work for Baltimore City Fire Department. Now we take people from all over the world, but back then you had to live in the city. They actually came and checked if you lived there. I can remember them coming and knocking on the doors of my neighbors to see if they knew me and what they thought of me at that time. Getting back to the point I was trying to make. Like I said, I lived in the city and I didn't have access to volunteering. So I didn't know anything about emergency medical technician, which you have to be in a fire department. I didn't know anything about fire suppression, which you would probably get these skills if you volunteered. And we don't have volunteer in the city. So being a city resident, they taught you everything that you needed to know. And fresh from school, I was already in the rhythm of studying. So it was physically demanding, but like I say, great shape at the time. But mentally, I kind of breezed through.
Why am I? So a lot of people don't realize that there are also health requirements. They have to go through drug testing. Is this a government?
This is a city government job, Baltimore City. So yeah, you have to pass a criminal background check. You have to do a drug screening, 2 or 3 drug screenings. Some of them are unannounced, so you never know where they go. They still, in my 29th year, they still can call me down for a drug screening to make sure that you are clear as far as having anything illegal in your system. So, like I said, you have to have a high school diploma, GED, or above. No major criminal background history, and be drug free.
Okay, I mean that's something that I would hope most of us can bring to the table. I know unfortunately that in this day and time that we're living in, we find that a lot of our people are now misqualifying themselves, getting types.
Yes, yes.
And that's what city jobs go out outside their communities to bring people in. And people don't understand how important it is to have people from your community, especially when it comes to responders, to understand the dynamics of the community, cities that they're in. But when we can't use, they can't, not we, when they can't use the people in the communities that they're in because you don't qualify. Smallest things, and it may seem like smallest, but I know it's hard for others to possibly complete your high school education or stay out. It depends on the background you're coming from. So it's not always everybody. But again, it's important to have people within your own community helping to be there for you. Because what people don't know about the fire department, you're not just there to put a fire.
Oh no, I mean we do so many things in a job. I mean, a lot of people think that's we sit around and only respond to fires, but we respond to every emergency. You can have a water leak in your house and we're coming. You can have a socket that's not working right, we're coming. A medical emergency, overdose, a shooting, a stabbing, anything that you can think of in the city, we often get there before the police department. And this is directly after shootings when you're dealing with the crowd. You're dealing with maybe a suspect that's still on the scene. So we handle all of that.
So you are guys true first responder.
Yes.
Not taking anything away from anyone else.
No, of course not.
You are responders that everything.
Yes.
How long has the department been in place?
Well, the history of the Baltimore City Fire Department goes back to 1797. And of course, you know our status in this country in 1797. And it took until 1952 I can believe I can check with some people 52, 53 for the first class of black firefighters to be in Baltimore City. So it took some time from the 1700s into the 1950s, and still they faced segregation. They faced all kind of discrimination in the firehouse. They weren't allowed to sleep in the same beds, couldn't use the same sinks, they couldn't use the same toilets. You know, things that we take for granted now, but it's really, really hard on those guys being in those situations.
Wow.
So, yeah.
That's something you have to endure all of that and still help people in the communities, deal with anything. That takes a lot of courage and heart. Um, that's unbelievable. So right now, I know that you started the police department. What about the fire department? Is it a shortage in the fire department?
Well, technically, we have enough people to fully staff all of our units. We have 1,800 personnel in the Baltimore City Fire Department. So we have enough people. The problem is there are various reasons that people may be off of work. And when that happens, it causes shortfalls in our staffing. And we have overtime issues. We have, sometimes we have to close some units because we just don't have enough people for that particular shift.
What are some of the hours people don't realize? I know hours. What are the hours that firemen now we have everybody can now be a part of department?
Yes, yes.
What are the hours?
Well, currently we work a 24-hour shift. So when I come to work, say if I have to work tomorrow, which is Wednesday, I will work from Wednesday morning to Thursday morning, 24 hours, 6 to 6. So officially our time is 7 to 7. But people come in 6 as a courtesy to give people a little extra time to get where they need to go. So 7 to 7, and then I'm off Thursday. Then I will come back Friday and do the same shift, 24 hours. And then I'll be off for 5 consecutive days.
So when people understand that with the 24-hour period, you're not always on the move. You still get rest. You guys actually live a whole life. You eat, you sleep, you have birthday parties, different things. You go shopping together. You have a whole brother, sister, family.
Well, there is a lot of activity at the fire department in the stations, and it depends on the area of the city that you work in. Of course, everybody's not on the same socioeconomic level, so some areas put a greater strain on the fire services. So my whole career, I worked in the busiest parts of the city. So West Baltimore, in Baltimore's case, is always busy. So when you say you get sleep, you never get complete sleep in the firehouse because you're always aware, even in your sleep, of that bell going off. If that bell goes off, and especially if it's a fire, you're literally waking up out of your sleep, sliding the pole as in my firehouses, which are some of them are over 100 years old, and getting dressed in 30 seconds or less. And you're out the door. This is from a dead sleep. So if you do that as long as I have, 29 years, it really has a detrimental effect on your body. There are several studies that say that people that don't get enough rest, they really have heart issues. It's a lot of underlying things that can happen over the years of constantly having an adrenaline dump in your system. And sometimes it's a fire, sometimes it's not. But your body doesn't know that, and it reacts the same time every time. So we have a lot of issues with health issues, especially with somebody as much time as I have in the fire department that has been doing this for over 20 years. So it affects when you go home. I very rarely sleep through the night,
So
always waking up.
if it affects your health, does it also affect your mental health?
Yes, most of us suffer from PTSD from seeing some of the things that we see. Like I say, we are there before the police department gets there. We've seen burn victims. I've seen so many children burn, so many adults burn, some beyond recognition. I've seen people shot, and just hearing a mother screaming for her child, regardless of what type of person he is, that's her child. And that is in the back of your mind. Because I've seen it hundreds, thousands of times over 29 years. These things that stick with you. I can be in the middle of doing something at home, and an incident I had 20 years ago come up in my mind.
Wow.
So we suffer from, some negative aspects of some of the things that we see as police officers, military personnel, anybody that's in that profession, nurses, doctors. We also,
Wow. That is just amazing. Um, and sad, but it's also part of the job that you take on.
oh yeah, that's part of it.
Yeah. Now, one thing people may not know is that it's also a union job.
It is a union job. Yes, we are. We have two unions in the Baltimore City Fire Department. Local 734 deals with anybody that's below the rank of an officer. So you have firefighters, paramedics, um, what we call pump operators, and they drive the fire engines. EVDs drive the trucks in the local 734. 964, once you become a lieutenant and above, all the way up to battalion chief, you are represented by the 964 union. Then once you get to the level I am, I'm not in a union anymore. I serve at the pleasure of the mayor. So when you get to my position, you have to be in the back of your mind, this can be my last day. Have
Mm.
enough time, have to accomplish what you want to accomplish in your career. So if tomorrow they tell me they don't need my services anymore, I can be okay.
Do you often miss being in the midst of the fire?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's some people may find that kind of amazing, but the fire department for me versus if we go back to the earlier conversation when I worked in the research lab, that was slow paced, monotonous, something that's going to take years and years and years to get to the end of a result. I'm not that type of person. I need action. I need something different. Although being in the fire department and taking calls, you might take the same type of call, but it's never the same. No two fires are alike, no two medic calls are alike. So it was always different, always dynamic. Everything outside job, everything was different. Everything is different.
Well, I'm
So
happy that
yeah.
you obtained that position, and that was over. It was a large relief for the family.
Okay.
I mean, as we know that firemen and women, they can die. It's a percentage of that can happen in your city or any city.
Well, one thing about fighting fire is that people need to understand. Um, Anything that you do over and over and over, you get a level of comfortability with it. So I was comfortable. I would pull up on a fire and say, "This fire is in every window, every door." To me, I'm ready. That's easy. I see it. I know where it is. It's going to be hot because fires are hot, but I know how to put that out. But what you don't want to do is get a level of comfortability where you lose caution, where you think that since I've done this hundreds of times, literally, that this fire is going to be like the last fire, and then they never are. So I've been in situations where I was trapped in fire because something happened that was unexpected. The floor might have collapsed. You fell through the floor, or fire might lit off behind you, or a unit on the scene didn't put out a fire that you thought they were going to put out, and it's caused injuries. I've been burned several times. I have scars on my body. I can remember being burnt really bad in 2000. I had a fire, and we were first on the scene. A lot of fire, but I've done it hundreds of times.
Hmm.
And we put out the first floor, and heat rising. And the kitchen was on fire, and we didn't know it. So as I went up the steps, all that heat went off my legs. And I have rings around the top of where the boots are, where I was burnt first, second, third degree, but I couldn't walk for like a month.
Yeah.
Um, so I had some, and almost every fire, if you on the engine is with the hose, and we actually put the fire out, you're gonna get burned somewhere. People think that what we call the turnout, and I don't have one here displayed, that is fireproof. Nothing is fireproof.
How
It gives you
your equipment you're wearing? How heavy is that?
over 100 pounds easy, 150 maybe. But in the midst of that adrenaline dump, you don't feel it.
So that red hat, that one that hat from being fired.
This redhead, yes, that redhead went through a lot of fires. That, that was when I was a captain, which was two promotions ago from what I'm at and now deputy chief. So yeah, it's just been through, yes, through the mill.
And your uniform is that the uniform you typically have to wear.
That is an example. That is example of my dress uniform, which you would wear on official duties of the fire department. You might have an event at City Hall. You might be meeting the mayor. You might be at a press conference and you wear your dress uniform.
That's one thing I don't remember seeing much of the news. You don't often see the fire department having to play a role as the police department. The fire department is only, like you said, the first one seeing a lot of mass shootings and different things that are going on. Uh, Paul, here, the deputy chief or the battalion speak about the situation that's going on. So,
Well, what you need to understand, and I can only speak for Baltimore City, is the level of violence that's in Baltimore City. Crime is what politicians focus on, but there is a fire somewhere in the city every day. There's a fire every day. Any big situation that happens in the city, there's what you call a joint response. Police, fire, emergency management is always there. So one of our representatives is always there speaking. They may be in the background, but the police take the lead on a lot of things, especially with crime. And we also have individuals that are dedicated to just speaking to the media. As
okay.
far as on a situation where you have a fire and you may have a fatality, we have somebody that we have specifically trained to speak on that incident.
Here's a question that I didn't go through, but it just crossed my mind. And I always go through questions with my guests
Okay.
as we go, different questions will arise in my mind. Um, so women are joining the department now, and this is going on for a long time. Like how, what is the training? Is there training any different from men's training?
Well, when I came into the fire department, there weren't many women on the suppression side. And like I said, this was the early 90s. Most of the women kind of gravitated toward back then toward the medic side, paramedics being on the ride in the ambulance. And then it was a period in the late 90s, mid 2000s. There was a push for more female representation in the fire department, and they received the same training as any male,
Wow,
and they expected to perform up to a level any person is expecting to do with that training in the Baltimore City Fire
that's awesome. That's
Department.
awesome. Do the fire department have a lot of people that are um coming home from deployment?
We actually have a good bit of our membership that are also in the reserves military. We actually had some active duty people doing of the Iraq wars, Afghanistan. A lot of people would hold their position and would be deployed for 1, 2 years, however long the tour of duty is, and they will then rotate back into the fire department. So it's several members are like that.
So if their position is being held, does that stop you from having somebody in? You can't like temporarily hire firemen, can you?
No, what happens is that spot is held, and we just fill it with overtime or
Oh,
whatever we need to. Yeah.
okay.
Mhm.
Um, so you said we were talking about the percentage of and we didn't really go into that. But in a year, you saying how many people fire women could possibly die in fire?
And as far as members of the fire department, thankfully that's been relatively low, but I can personally remember at least 4 or 5 since I've been in the fire department. And
Oh
I
wow.
was actually on scene of one death in the mid 90s, 95 or so. We had a big fire in an area of the city called Hamden, and it was at a old warehouse, and a door collapsed, building fell on a young man. I
Mm,
can see his face now. I remember him well, and he didn't make it.
wow.
Crushed him, killed him. But we have a lot of injuries because as you can imagine, it's a very physical
Yeah.
job.
Yeah.
You know, you can have strains, sprains, breaks, burns. That's really on a weekly basis. But deaths, thankfully, it's something that's not on a.
I think that's what a lot of young people fear when looking at a job like this. I can remember being a kid, and when I was a kid, we had career, the police, the fire, city officials, nurses, doctors come to your school and
Mhm,
explain to you what that job, what you had to do when you got old to get those jobs, and
mhm.
reach out to people in the communities and talk to them, put notices on their doors, and we really don't get that anymore. You don't get that out. So now you're the generation of people that unless they really don't know what it is that you do.
Well,
That's almost that's not that is the service because that stops people from wanting to gravitate to the position of working for city officials.
what you need to understand is historically, certain people in the population have been excluded. The fire department, the police department, the correctional department were all things that people would pass down generations. So you would have 3 or 4 generations in the fire department. I can speak for that because I know of the same grandfather, father, son. Um, since we weren't privy to that information, I didn't know anything about the fire department other than you see an occasional fire truck going up down the street. So when I joined, and even to today, I'm the only those in the fire department.
Right.
So there's no generational presence
Yes.
in the fire department associated with me. So and that's all about having being exposed to the information and knowledge. You get it now where a guy that came in the fire department with me, his son is in the job. So that's 2 generations that served in the fire department. But it wasn't like that, you know, prior to we getting the knowledge and the information.
So now that goes to my next question. What is the percentage of people of color? Because I know we talked about the year of when it started in Baltimore City, but
Uh-huh.
of course, people of color weren't allowed to have these kind of positions
Yes.
down the line. So what is
Yes.
the percentage of people of color now in this day and age?
Well, like I stated earlier, the first African Americans came in the early 50s, and we call these gentlemen the pioneers. Some of them, we're actually losing them now because they're up in age. A lot of them are really up in age. But the representation in the city that's 65% black, it doesn't reflect in the fire department. We have maybe 32% of the fire department is African American at this time. And there's several reasons for this. You know, like I said, when I came to the fire department, you had to live in the city, and now you can. I've met people from England in the fire department
Wow.
that heard about the job in England and came, and
Wow.
people from all over this country. They work in Baltimore City, and they're all nice people. But I maintain that the first pool that they should target is people that live and work and are willing to live and work in Baltimore City.
And not only, you know, to take it even further, when you target people that live in the city, you're getting those dollars back to the community.
Yes, yes, yes.
When people are those tax dollars going elsewhere, um, and that kind of does service to the city themselves. And you see a lot of this happening um, in northern cities because I'm in the south, and we don't have we don't have a lot of representation of people of color in the south when it comes to the fire department and police department. And as stated earlier, it's a lack of knowledge. People don't know. So what is it tell people now for them to know and understand that it's okay to come to the fire department?
I would first of all let them know that you can do anything anybody else can do. When I came into the fire department, like I can emphasize again, I didn't know anybody. I didn't know anything about the fire department. I had no relatives in the fire department, but I felt like I can do anything that anybody else can do. So if people understand the how, of course, you have your downsides to any job, and I think I hit on some of the issues that we have from PTSD, lack of sleep, but the positive aspects, we should be represented in our communities, helping people in our community. So, and once they realize the benefits um, that you can have as far as pensions, things that really don't exist in today's market anymore, um, then they would, I think more people would flock. And just for the schedule alone, would flock to services in the fire service, jobs in the fire service.
So would you say the career choice that you made, lifetime choice, that it was well worth it?
Yes, I'm very satisfied with the career I've had. I can talk for hours and hours and hours of incidences and people I've met, friends I've made, anything that you've done for a third of your life, it's going to always have an impact on. So yeah, it was. My mother definitely was on to something. Almost 30 years ago, when she stayed on me to get this job, and I'm glad she did. But very, very rewarding. Very.
Do you see yourself slowing down anytime soon?
I was actually slowed down by coming out of suppression, meaning not actually fighting fires. So
Okay.
yeah, slowing down. You kind of, and this is for me. This is the perfect way to end a career because if when I was fighting fires, like I said, I was in the busiest areas of the city. I was always go 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 go. So to one day, if I'd have stayed fighting fires, to say, okay, I'm gonna retire tomorrow. How do you turn that off?
Yeah.
That's a process. So I've been in the process of turning that off for the last 6 years.
Okay.
So yeah, I'm slowing down. I'm kind of getting concept in my mind of life after the fire department. This is a young man's job, although I'm still relatively young, but this is a young man's job for people that are, more physically active. Um, it's just as you get older, it's just you need to slow down. Do other things.
Okay. Yeah, I think we all are at a point in our lives where you start to look at the end game a
Mm-hmm.
little bit,
Mm-hmm.
how you approach it,
Mm-hmm.
so that you can enjoy it. Nobody wants to get in the end game and enjoy it. You don't want to
Yes.
get to the point where it's time to retire and you can't enjoy it, burnt yourself out. Now,
Yes.
as we're starting to wind up, is there right now, are you guys out of the fire department for Baltimore right now?
Well, I mean, it's funny that you asked that. They are in the process of putting out the job announcement sometime in the near future. Exact dates I'm not exactly privy to, but anybody in your viewership in any state, because of the way our qualifications are, when they do start hiring, anybody can apply for it wherever you live.
You guys hear that? So this is a career choice that doesn't matter where you live. You just need a couple of things. You just need a GED, diploma, be able to pass drug testing, take a test, and get through some physical stuff. Yeah, you're in there for retirement, a city job, something you can look back on and pass down some generational knowledge and wealth. I think it's a very important conversation, especially people of color need to have more of. Looking into jobs to retire from and
Hmm.
with to your family,
Hmm.
the health benefits
Hmm.
alone. We're all looking at the best option for our families. And sometimes the sacrifice, because being a first responder is a major sacrifice.
It is. It is.
Um, and not knowing you're going to be able to take care of you. But with this, you know that that sacrifice has to be made. Your family will be taken care of.
Absolutely.
So I urge you all to look up the fire department. because we do have you all welcome.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
wow.
Yes.
And I just want to make sure that we were able to have this conversation because I feel that our city officials are often, and we know we have to talk about when it comes to these jobs, but this is the jobs that we need around our cities around the country. And all hear about closing down locations, and this is not a job that cuts on any closing. We need them to continue because they keep us safe. They save our lives. They are our responders. I really enjoyed you, Deputy Chief Arlen. The same day you are,
Well,
and I'm glad that you could join this conversation.
oh, I absolutely loved it. I like to leave your audience with some information. In the mid '90s, the Discovery Channel came from England, and they rode with my shift only in the whole fire department for like 4 or 5 months filming us. And the results of that film was a documentary called Streets of Fire. You can YouTube that. I was probably 30, 31, so I look like a kid, but I was a major part of that documentary, at least the one that they showed in Europe. I was definitely a major part of that one. So check it out.
We spoke of that. We also had actors that wanted to specialize in fire department movies.
Sure,
So
yeah, yeah.
that when the actor is getting ready for part, they often study, and he's had some comments to him.
Yeah, yeah. I can actually tell you a quick story. They did Ladder 49. That's another movie you can check out. Of course, it's all fiction, but it's a pretty good movie based on the fire department. And I was at a station one day, and one of the rituals in the firehouse is if you're an officer, the regular firefighters, when you finish eating breakfast, will come get your plate to wash your plate. So I'm sitting there talking to guys like I usually do, and this one guy walks over, gets my plate, and I keep looking at him. It's like, I've seen him before, but I thought he was just one of the regular rookies. Fire department uniform looked just like anybody else. Then it dawns on me, that's the gladiator, Joaquin Phoenix. So he washed my plate.
Uh, uh,
Yes, yes,
awesome
yes.
story. Well, I thank you again for joining us, and you guys always watch comments conversation on YouTube and on Facebook Live. This is a pre-recorded session. This was recorded on a Tuesday night at the same time at 9 p.m. You'll be able to watch this on Saturday. Well, be the time that I release it at 9 p.m. So I hope you're able to share, comment, like, know. Keep this going. You can't keep the conversation without you being a part. Thank you again. Have a great evening. Until then, keep having conversations. Bye.